everybody for coming down here. This is the beginning of what's going to be a real long, arduous, battle. It's a battle, to free Khalil and Tafi, but it's really a battle to free CUNY, because that's what they're fighting for, and that's what brings all of us down here. It's hard to come out in the morning. We shouldn't have to be doing this. They should be, being students on the campus, organizing on the campus, and they should be back in the Morales Shakur Center, which is, a space which has been self-determining for 23 years now, since 1989, actually 24 years. The point is, we're here to support them. We're going to be here again to support them. But there's something, which is a bigger threat to them than the criminal justice system, and that is the CUNY disciplinary process. On Friday, this coming Friday, the 22nd, there's going to be a disciplinary hearing where Tafi and Khalil are going to be defendants. We've asked for an open hearing. CUNY has said they've granted an open hearing, but they put us in a tiny room where there's only 20 seats. Last time we had the hearing a week ago, there was 100 people who wanted to get in. And what they did was, we had about a half dozen witnesses. They put our witnesses in an empty lecture hall. We said, look, why not give us the hearing, let us have the hearing in the empty lecture hall and put the witnesses in the little room. What we were told now, and this is unusual, we were told that security has now said that they will not give us a large room. Now, I've been involved in the student movement for 45 years at City College. I was expelled at disciplinary hearings at City College. We never had the level of security, we never had the level of paranoia when it was white students coming up for disciplinary charges for the political things we did in the 1960s. Now what's happening is we have a situation where, I also have to say, for 25 years I've been specializing in representing CUNY students at disciplinary hearings. 85% of my practice is representing students and other protesters. We have never had a situation where, when we had a large numbers of the public wanting to come to a disciplinary hearing, the college wouldn't find us a lecture hall, a cafeteria room, or a ballroom. We also never had a situation where security was dictating to the college administration what they can and can't do. There has been, CUNY is being militarized, and there is also, part of that has been a military coup within CUNY. As a result of student protests in 1989 and 1991, CUNY ended the practice of having colleges have their own independent security operations. The reason they did that was because in 1991, the black and Puerto Rican presidents of CUNY colleges refused to call the police when students shut down the entire CUNY system in one of the biggest protests that had been seen in this country since the early 1970s. As a result of that protest, as a result of the legal defense and the movement that made it so the 200 students charged did not get, none of them got disciplined, none of them got suspended or expelled. As a result of that, CUNY created the CUNY Peace Officer Corps, which is now a police force, which has now grown to the point of actually telling the administration what to do. What is the mission of the CUNY Police Force? The mission of the CUNY Police Force, of the CUNY Peace Officers, is to deal with protest, is to preempt protest, is to make sure that the kind of protest that CUNY students were doing 20 years ago and 40 years ago will never happen again. In the year 2000, some students did a Freedom of Information Law request. And what they found in 2000 was that the CUNY Peace Officers, the Department of Public Safety, in a period of 2 years, had purchased 130,000 rounds of ammunition. 130,000 rounds of ammunition, including several thousand rounds of ammunition that were buckshot, birdshot, and hollow point bullets that would be illegal for the New York City Police Department to possess. They also had body armor, night sights. The point is, under what scenario is a campus peace officer going to fire a wide dispersal shotgun on the campus? What is the mission? What is the scenario? The thing is that, what is happening at CUNY is a struggle for the 21st century, a struggle for the intellectual, political, landscape of the 21st century. There are more Black and Latino students in CUNY than have ever been at any university in the history of this nation. And the struggle at CUNY is a struggle for the future of those students. Whether that future is going to be having students trained to be Colin Powells, to be Condoleezza Rice's, to be Clarence Thomas's. I mean, CUNY has the potential of producing more Clarence Thomas's, Colin Powell's, and Condoleezza Rice's than the Ivy League, than any university in the nation. And the issue is, are we going to be producing students like that, or are we going to, or is CUNY going to be producing, leaders like Malcolm X, like Assata Shakur, like people like who were, like people who were part of liberation movements, throughout this country. Are CUNY students going to be self-determining and self-defining, or are they going to be, tools of a military? That's why David Petraeus is coming to CUNY. He's coming to CUNY in the tradition of Colin Powell to militarize CUNY. We drove, I was part of the movement that drove ROTC off campus. I was a supporter of the movement that integrated CUNY at a time when, at a time when CUNY was lily white. My point is that that these students are following in that tradition, and it is and CUNY basically understands. They understand the enormity of the struggle for the future of the 21st century. There are a lot of. I think you want to hear from the other folks who have come, so I'm just going to say, I'm very grateful you're all here. This has been a long struggle. It started for me 45 years ago, and I'm sure that some of you are still going to be fighting for a free CUNY 45 years from now. And I'm sure these young men and their comrades will. Okay, our next court date is January 9th. The next disciplinary hearing date is going to be on the 22nd, this Friday, at 10 a.m. There's going to be a rally, I understand, at 9:30 a.m. We need people to be demanding from CUNY that there be a public room large enough to accommodate these students. We also need CUNY to end the blocks on their registration. I mean, right now, the hearing is sort of moot, because CUNY has blocked their registration, so it's as if they're suspended already for the spring semester. And now Khalil is a senior. He needs, he's closed out of classes that he needs right now. That is really unacceptable. It's also vindictive. I mean, just think about it, young sisters and brothers. They are under. CUNY says these are dangerous people. They're so dangerous that they have to be under an emergency suspension. The emergency suspension is only legally supposed to last 10 days, but CUNY wants to keep it going because it says these guys are too dangerous to come on campus. Okay, you know what? We know that's not true, but let's assume that was true. Let's assume these were dangerous people. Okay, why bar them from registering online, from going online? That is vindictive. That's vindictive. It's not rationally related to any kind of threat that they. I mean, if they were violent people, if they were murderers or something, they couldn't threaten anybody by registering online. That is, and what that does is that means that the whole disciplinary process becomes a sham and a farce. It's up to you and the faculty and the alumni and the students, to make sure that the disciplinary process becomes fair and open, and that students do what they were trying to do. Students have a right to peaceably demonstrate, and that's what they were doing. I'm sorry to speak so long, but I hope to see, many of you again, and I hope that, many of you will be, fighting the good fight at CUNY years after I'm gone. And by the way, this is Mark Yu, a great attorney who is now stepping forward, as I'm stepping back. And Mark, give a few words.
Okay, so the next court date is January 9th in Part A, so everyone should take that down. And the next disciplinary hearing is this Friday, the 22nd. It's going to be at City College, outside it's going to be in room 212, the North Academic Center building.
Could you briefly explain what happened inside for those of us who weren't, like charges changed to and all that?
Khalil has 6 charges, and Haftar has 7 charges. They're misdemeanor charges, mostly misdemeanor charges, and 1 violation charge.
Okay, there's also no offer, which is, normally in most cases, the DA would make an offer. So right now they're facing potentially the worst case scenario is they're facing a year in jail. You know, that's
Say the charge again.
the charges are riot, inciting to riot, criminal 2 counts of criminal mischief each, obstructing government administration, and attempted assault and harassment. Is the last one, yeah. And so basically, you know, it's a litany of charges. It's our understanding that these charges are at the instigation. The report was made not by the district attorney's office or the police, but it was made by CUNY. It was after Mark had forced CUNY to hold a disciplinary hearing by telling them that they were legally bound to have a disciplinary hearing within 10 days. After the first, you know, after our first session of the hearing, we were suddenly notified that they were going to be arrested. You know, so now they're in double jeopardy, and people are going to have to, you know, come up and speak out, you know, for them, because, you know, they're limited in what they can say, because anything they say not just can be used against them, but anything they, you know, when a lawyer tells you anything you say can be used against you, that's not true. Anything you say will be used against you. You know, it will be used against you, and it'll be twisted in such a way. So, so we're going to need people who are their comrades, you know, to come forward and to testify for them at the hearing, and hopefully we're going to need, you know, the committee will give us the opportunity to bring those witnesses forward.
Question: will they allow the outsiders, like community activities, inside the building?
Okay, anybody is allowed to come to the public hearing. Anybody. You don't have to be a student. However, you know, they have now told us they're only going to allow 20 people, and look at how many people are here, you know, and how many, you know, and this is like people having to come downtown. How many people do you think are going to be at City College, you know, on wanting to come to the hearing? So, you know, so the point is, you know, something has to be done to make that hearing to get us a bigger room, you know, that can accommodate the, you know, number of people. And I'll say, you know, they're saying that they can't have more than 20 people at the hearing without having a security threat. I've been to hearings where we've had, you know, hundreds of people, you know, and I'm talking about at CUNY for 25 years, and we have never, ever once at CUNY, you know, had a situation where they had to cancel a hearing because of a disruption. You know, the point is, you're dealing with students, you're dealing with, you know, faculty, you're dealing with, you know, people who, you know, who are seeking an education. You know, if there is any place where you should have open hearings, it should be at a public college. You know, the public college should be setting an example of openness, not an example of like, you know, of a police state lockdown. I mean, at Hostos, you know, the Dominican students had a slogan. You know, it was, you know, and they were marching around with signs years ago, and it was, estamos estudiantes, no estamos criminales. You know, and my Spanish is not that good, but I think you get the gist, you know.
I think one very unprecedented thing about this case is that their disciplinary proceeding is still going on, and before that was even resolved, CUNY allowed the district attorney to come in and file criminal charges against them. So that affects like what they can say in the disciplinary hearing.
Okay, so is there anybody else who wants to? Denise or Alice, you have anything you want to say?
Do you want to
So
say
how do we
anything?
make sure that we're getting these rooms? Who are we contacting?
Excuse me?
Who are we contacting to make sure that we get these large rooms and that we're getting these fair hearings?
Okay, the people who give out, who basically make the decisions, you know, would be the administration of CUNY. It would start with the Vice President for Student Affairs, and you know, and I guess within that you would have the ultimate authority at City College is the college president.
Yeah, I'd just like to say my name is David Suka, and I was part of the same protest that Taffy and Khalil were a part of, and I was arrested that day as well, and my son was almost hurt by the CUNY security guards, and I was maced on the ground, and what they did was they called ACS on my son, and said I endangered the welfare of my child, and they're actively calling the mother as we speak within the last week, saying if I show up at another protest or up at City College with my son, they will take my son away from my family, from her family. It's completely destabilized the relationship I've had with my son. I was the primary caretaker of my son. Every morning I would show up at 7 o'clock in the morning until she came home at 6 o'clock. She's a nurse at Woodhull Hospital in Brooklyn. So this is really the draconian methods that they use to like destabilize our families, you know, and people have to know that this is evil incarnate, like the way they operate, and we should be very careful about how we interact with the state, because the state is out to destroy our families and to upend everything that we love.
I mean, we were held as political prisoners because we're trying to liberate CUNY for the people. I have 2 younger siblings that someday I want to see be able to have access to CUNY. However, that is not the path that CUNY is taking right now, and that is why lots of people have been struggling, and that is why CUNY arrested 10 people this year so far, and it's continuing to repress us. But the people are going to continue struggling to make sure that the communities of New York City have access to CUNY, because that's what CUNY was made for working class and immigrant people in the city. So we're going to have to keep up this struggle. This Friday, as has already been said, we have our hearing at 10 a.m. at City College, and then on November 25th, the Board of Trustees is having a vote on the expressive activities policy at Baruch College, for which the Revolutionary Student Coordinating Committee, the Professors Union, the Professional Staff Congress, and many other groups are also organizing together, because this is an attack on the whole of the people. So I hope to see all of you there.
Brothers, sisters, comrades, I want to give a great thanks for everyone coming out to our hearing and defending us, because we in CUNY, and our struggle for CUNY, is the defense of the people. Inside, most of the people arrested are there for open container, are there for hopping the train, are there for soliciting to ask for a swipe on the subway. When people out, like many of you, struggle against stop and frisk, struggle for housing, struggle for women's struggle for women's rights outside, that is the struggle in defense of us. So it is only our duty in CUNY to struggle for you. As it was said before, there are 2 paths for CUNY. There's the path of the administration, the path of privatization and militarization, where the community is excluded and the campus is itself militarized and closed off, and discourse is shut down. There's the other path that we wish to pursue, the path of getting rid of the Board of Trustees, the path of having the students, the faculty, and the community run CUNY, and we're going to fight for that.